And presenter Michael Rowland is at Glen Innes on the New South Wales Northern Tablelands, and reporter Alison Horn joins us from Yeppoon in central Queensland. Michael, to you first, what are conditions like there today?
Getting hot, Joe. It started out very chilly here at Glen Innes. I'm at the Rural Fire Service staging post here, but the temperatures are increasing. Still very mild conditions, and fire crews are using these conditions today to try to contain as many of the local blazes as possible before the catastrophic weather starts tomorrow. There's an extreme, very high fire danger for the area around here. Lots of homes lost in the region. 2 people died in fires not far from here on Friday. So there is just this desperate, I guess, race against time to try to get as many fires at least contained before strong winds kick in, and anything could be possible if that happens tomorrow.
Yeah, so that little community of Waitalaba was one of the worst hit communities on Friday. What can you tell us about what happened there? And are there a lot of, and we're just seeing shots now of the Waitalaba school that was burnt out. Are a lot of the people from that area still at evacuation centres in Glen Innes today, and they don't know what's happened to their homes?
That is absolutely right, Joe. A great degree of uncertainty. This tiny community was virtually wiped out. We're speaking on News Breakfast to Bruce Walker, one of the residents who's still there. His home was saved. His estimation was 52 of the 70 homes and structures in that tiny community were wiped out by a wall of fire that erupted so quickly on Friday, swept across that community and leaving people with little time to try to fight it. So people are out here in Glen Innes regrouping, fearful of what they'll see when they get back. I just spoke to another resident on News Breakfast, David Peters. His house sadly was burnt down. His main concern is the safety of his horses that are hopefully still there alive in Waitabla as well. So just another example of just how the devastating effect these fires have had and the ongoing effects they'll have as this tiny community in northern New South Wales tries to pick up the pieces. And
tomorrow the catastrophic warning is for the Greater Sydney area and the Hunter region, but the danger extends far beyond there as well, with really dangerous fire conditions across much of New South Wales for tomorrow, and so these fires in these areas around Glen Innes could flare again too.
Oh, absolutely. We're getting that information from fire crews on the ground here in Glen Innes, near Taree on the mid-north coast of New South Wales, further north in New South Wales, and that's before we start talking about Queensland. But speaking about the Greater Sydney region, yes, for the first time since new fire rating systems were brought in 2009 after the Black Saturday fires in Victoria, Greater Sydney is facing a catastrophic fire danger tomorrow. Joe, and you've been in the business for a long time as well, I'm sure you'd agree. I've never seen fire chiefs so worried about what might erupt in Sydney tomorrow. They're telling people to stay away from bushfire-prone areas, even go to shopping centres, shopping malls, just to ensure their safety tomorrow. On News Breakfast, I spoke to the New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian, and that was certainly a warning she was ramming home as well.
We're advising anybody across Greater Sydney, the Hunter and across the state, if you live near bush, make sure you're ready, make sure you're safe, and just stay away from any type of bushland whatsoever. There are dire conditions tomorrow. We want to make sure we're as well prepared as we can be. And of course, whilst we deal with what's occurring tomorrow, we're still coming to terms with what we've seen happen in the last 48 hours. And the devastating loss of life and property has been really difficult for many communities. Difficult's an understatement. And the trauma of not just people losing their homes, but even people who haven't had their properties lost. What they've witnessed is traumatic and will stay with them forever.
New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian there. OK, let's go over into Queensland now, and reporter Alison Horn is at Yeppoon. So that's just to the northwest, about 40 k's northwest, I think, of Rockhampton. There were fires there over the weekend to the west of Yeppoon. Alison, talk us through what happened over the weekend there in Yeppoon, how much property was lost, and how many people were able to escape with their lives.
Some really terrifying scenes here over the weekend, Joe. What we know so far is that there have been 16 structures of some sort that have been affected, either completely destroyed or damaged in some part. We understand that 3 of those structures are homes, although the rapid assessment damage teams are currently out on the ground trying to get some more certainty as to exactly the extent of the damage. We know that hundreds and hundreds of hectares of land has been burnt through in these areas, and it has only just been downgraded from an emergency level warning overnight. We're currently at the command post, the staging area. You can see that it's around the time where crews are changing over now for another long, hard day. But luckily, the conditions have been pretty favourable overnight. We've seen the temperatures drop, the winds have eased, and the humidity has crucially increased. And it's so important because the ground and the coverage on the ground is just so dry. So any opportunity to increase that moisture content on the ground is a really welcome sign from firefighters here.
And Alison, are there evacuation centres set up there and people have been excluded from going into some areas?
Yeah, so the roads in these areas are still closed because it isn't under control yet, this fire. It's not within containment lines. We did see yesterday a number of these blazes actually join together into one mega fire front. And in some respects, that has made it easier for crews because those water bombers in the air can just focus on that one area. But in the same respect, if you've got a number of fires joining together in one, you have to imagine that it increases the breadth of that fire front, and it's incredibly challenging, particularly in these areas where it's pretty inaccessible for some parts. It's very rural, very isolated, and today is going to be even more of a challenge. I don't know how much you can see, Joe, but it is so incredibly smoky here today. It's like this township of Yeppoon has been blanketed in this thick, dense fog, and it's so thick, it's choking my throat, it's in my nostrils, my eyes are stinging, and we're still several kilometres away from the fire front. So that gives you a bit of an understanding about how big this fire is to cause this much smoke. And
I noticed the temperatures are getting up there today, so it's still kind of, quite cooler in New South Wales today, but it's still pretty hot in Queensland, huh?
Yeah, the mid-30s is what they're expecting today, and even worse predicted for Tuesday and Wednesday. And for firefighters who've been battling this blaze in particular for going on more than 48 hours now, an incredibly tough situation on the front line. But as I mentioned to you before, one of those small saving graces that crews are looking for today is that increase in the humidity, which will provide a little bit more moisture content for those really tinderbox dry conditions.
And Alison, what else can you tell us about the fires in other parts of Queensland?
So 47 fires still burning across Queensland at the moment. None of them are at emergency level, but as we've seen over the past few days, that situation can change incredibly quickly. You know, for example, here around the Yeppoon area and heading up into the Cobberbull area, we saw on Saturday there were a couple of warnings, and then by that evening it was at emergency level and a number of homes had been destroyed. And that's the sort of situation that crews across the entire state are preparing for, and that's why authorities, including the Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk, have really urged all residents of Queensland to stay vigilant.
Across Queensland need to be listening to emergency services, and if they are told or asked to evacuate, don't second guess them, just do it, because it's in the best interest of you and your family. We want people to be safe. It's going to be too hard for people to go back in and do rescues once those conditions get out of control.
Anastasia Palaszczuk. And we'll go back to Michael Rowland now on the northern tablelands of New South Wales in Glen Innes. Michael, it's been the case that since Saturday authorities were saying 150 homes, around 150 homes had been destroyed there, and that was only indicative because they hadn't been able to actually assess the fire grounds yet. What's the latest on the expectation around those numbers?
Fire authorities, Joe, are still urging people to get ready for bad news. That toll, they say, will still rise. We desperately hope it'll be single figures, not double figures, obviously, but fire crews are still getting into some of these often remote hamlets, really, where you might only have 3 or 4 houses. But if, hamlet after hamlet is knocked out, that can raise that tally as well. Don't forget that, though, that 150 figure jumped from 100 in the space of a few hours from memory over the weekend. So that was quite dramatic over the weekend. But all we're going on this morning is that that warning that grim warning from fire authorities that toll will rise, and hopefully the death toll won't rise. The fire authorities have accounted for all of the people missing. Sadly, though, all of these communities on the mid-north coast mourning the loss of those 3 much-loved local community members.
OK, we'll leave it there for the moment. Michael Rowland reporting from Glen Innes in New South Wales and Alison Horn in Yeppoon in Queensland.